Hello, I'm Sue Manches, founder of expertparentingadvice.com. Since 2021, I've interviewed the world's leading parenting experts to uncover the secrets to becoming a better parent. In this interview with Dr. Wittenberg, a practicing psychologist and a nationally known parenting writer and television guest expert, we talk about how to really understand why your children act the way they do. Dr. Hedder also teaches a model of 5 different personalities that you can use to understand your child's behavior. I've learned so much over the past few years, and today I'm going to show you the parenting skills you need to thrive.
When children feel that they're heard and seen and appreciated, they're much more likely to go along with you, even if they don't really want to.
I'm talking to Dr. Hedder Wittenberg. She's a child psychologist specializing in the development of children. What is your favorite strategy or technique that's working really well for you or your clients to getting kids to listen and cooperate?
Well, I would say that understanding where the child is coming from, first and foremost, what their ultimate goal is, expressing to them that you understand what their goal is and you sympathize with it, but you need them to do it your way for now. Really expressing that you understand where they're coming from. That doesn't mean you don't hold the limit. That doesn't mean you don't have them do what you ultimately need them to do. But when children feel that they're heard and seen and appreciated, they're much more likely to go along with you, even if they don't really want to.
I often find it struggle to get my kids to listen. It is when they are busy with something or they want to do it their way. So just like getting on their level can really make a difference, and that is sort of what you are saying. Do you have any tips for how to actually practically do it? Like, are there any methods we can use just to make it easier to show them that we are on their level and that we understand?
Well, what's so interesting and what I'm always reminding parents about is this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation, because humans aren't one-size-fits-all. And so if you have multiple children, or you see other kids, you realize, oh, this technique works really well with this particular child. It doesn't work at all with mine. How come? And that's because my child has a completely different personality than the other child. And just like with adults, for some people, certain things work and other things don't because it has to do with their personality and what works with their personality first. So for instance, for a child who's very active and has a lot of energy, they're not going to want to sit still and listen and do, sort of a boring task. Whereas a child who is more observant and quiet, you're going to have an easier time getting them to sit and do something with you. Customize your approach to the temperament and personality of your child. So if you have a very active, high-spirited child, if you do something that's like, let's have a race and go see how quickly you can get ready for bed, is much more likely to be successful. And if you have a child that's much more observant and cautious, instead you might say, oh, I'm noticing it's almost time for bed. I want to give you a warning. I want to give you a reminder. And pretty soon, it's going to be time for us to go get your teeth brushed, get dressed for bed. Let them know in advance and walk them through it so they're not startled and surprised and upset with an abrupt change. So you're going to have a very different approach depending on the personality of your particular child.
So it's all about just thinking about the personality of your child and understanding your child to work from where the child is at. And you will do things differently for different children, maybe. Like one child may be an active child, one child may be a cautious child, and you approach them differently.
That's right. And the thing is, they have the personality evident from birth. It's not fully formed from birth, but they have little hints that they give us from the beginning if they're going to be, for instance, very active or very cautious. And that stays true, with some modifications over time. So you kind of start to understand, oh, I've got a very cautious child on my hand here. I'm going to adjust my approach accordingly. And then similarly for the personalities of your other children. So in the same family, you may have very different approaches that work with your different children. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. That's why these sort of one-size-fits-all recommendations are always only sort of halfway successful, because they work for some children, but then don't work for others. And the parents of the other kids say, well, what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with my kid? Because it doesn't work. And it's like, no, that's a misunderstanding of human nature and of child development.
That's why I sometimes feel like parenting advice doesn't work, because your child is an individual with his own personality.
That's right. Yes.
So what type of personalities have you seen in your practice? What type of personalities does children embody that you can look out for to get to know your child's personality?
There's definitely types. I mean, it's not the sort of exhaustive list, but based on what we know from child development and child temperament research, and this is research-based, that children are born hardwired to have a particular set of temperaments that once they interact with the environment, it's going to make their personality. And now, this is not an exhaustive list, but there's kind of 5 types that I identify in my upcoming potty training course, which is called Let's Get This Potty Started. And there are 5 what I call potty personalities, but they're the personalities of young children, broadly speaking. So there's an energetic, highly active type that I call tornado. There's the easy temperament type, like some children are just sort of straightforward and easy, and that's called the eager beaver. There's the kind of child that just wants to play and hang around and doesn't mind if there's a mess, and they take their time, and I call that style the hippie child. There's the cautious one we were talking about before, the little worried, a little slow to warm, and sometimes a little, what sometimes we call stubborn, but cautious, slow to warm, that I call the mule. The last one is the accountant. The accountant is the child who's a real rule follower and really clings to structure and rules and wants to know how they're supposed to do things, and is upset when everyone doesn't follow the rules.
In which category does a strong-willed child fall, or is it not specifically in one category?
There's a lot of different varieties of strong-willed, right? So sometimes a strong-willed child is very active, is the sort of tornado that has endless amounts of energy and is bouncing off the walls. A lot of times a strong-willed child is the mule personality, which just doesn't like change and doesn't want to jump right in and wants to hold back, and they're more resistant to trying new things. And so you can't get them to sort of go along with the program. It depends. Strong-willed children have their own sort of subcategories, don't they?
Is there anything you can do with regards to house rules? Like, one of the rules we are struggling with is keeping the kids out of the kitchen because we've taken off the baby gate. So trying to get them to understand house rules. Is there any specific tips you can give with regards to house rules?
House rules, I learned a lot about that from preschool teachers that I've interacted with over the years. And what preschool teachers understand is the combination of what the children are capable of understanding, combining with modifying the environment accordingly. So, is it time to remove the baby gates yet? Maybe, maybe not. If they're using your best explanations and your best guidance for, guys, when I'm cooking, it's dangerous for you to be in here. You need to be out in the living room. And they're perhaps too young to hold on to that. Then you remind them, but you keep the baby gates up and you say, guys, when you're old enough, you'll remember. But right now, I have to help you remember. You're going to keep reminding them about what the rule is. But because of safety, you really sort of have to be extra cautious. In the olden days, what our parents and grandparents would do would just be to punish. If you come in, I'm going to give you a snack or I'm going to yell at you. Well, that works, but it's not good. Right? It works, but for a bad reason. Instead, we get in the perspective of where they are mentally. And a young child, especially up until about the age of 7, we cannot count on them to remember consistently something like, don't come in the kitchen when I'm cooking, because we know that their prefrontal lobes are not developed enough to hang on to that rule. They need reminders. They need that physical gate. They need more than we can give them if we have our back turned to them at the stove.
Sounds really good. I think it's practical tips that I can immediately use in my own life. It looks like it all comes back to an element of being mindful with your children, just being mindful, in seeing in the present moment what's going on with them, what do they need, where are they coming from.
It's very important to be mindful, and it's also very important to be knowledgeable about what we can reasonably expect from a child at a particular age. If we understand that for a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, in their brain, they really haven't progressed yet to the point where they can consistently remember enough, that they need to be reminded. If we know that, and then we understand where they're coming from, they want to be with us in the kitchen, or they're hungry, or whatever it is, and we say, you know what, I'm going to put the gate up because I want you to be safe, but here's a snack, or whatever it is. And then when you get older, you remember, but now I want to keep you safe.
Yeah, I think sometimes parents expect too much from children. They expect them to remember the house rules and follow it. But like you say, children are not developmentally there yet. And parents need to understand that and be patient with your children.
Yes, they will learn if we're consistent and remind. And just remember, it might take 100 more times for me to remind them. But they will eventually remember, especially if we're consistent.
I think it's a bit frustrating for parents to consistently remind them.
Oh, yeah. It's very frustrating. Very frustrating, no doubt about it.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you for your great advice.
Hi, I'm Sue from expertparentingadvice.com. Since 2021, I've interviewed the world's leading parenting experts to uncover the secrets to becoming a better parent. Before having children, I always imagined how great it would be to be a mom and to create a family full of joy, love, and wonderful memories. But after my kids were born, I quickly realized that reality was very different. Everything was so difficult. I needed help. I decided to find and interview the world's leading parenting experts to find out how I can get my kids to cooperate without yelling or threats, build a better relationship with them, and finally be the type of parent that I've always wanted to be. I asked more than 24 of the world's leading parenting experts one question: what is your best strategy to get kids to cooperate? Get your free copy of my book containing all these interviews at my website, expertparentingadvice.com/listen free.